The sound echoed through the hospital corridor like a gunshot. Zara's head snapped to the side, her hand instinctively reaching for her swollen belly as the sting spread across her cheek. The nurses froze. Dr. Johnson's clipboard clattered to the floor. Even the beeping machine seemed to pause in shock. Nathan's hand was still raised, his face twisted with rage. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled from running his fingers through it. The phone in his other hand was still glowing with Candace's name on the screen, the call that had triggered this nightmare. "You embarrassed me," Nathan hissed, his voice low but deadly. "Calling me away from an important meeting for this drama." Zara touched her burning cheek, her dark eyes filling with tears that had nothing to do with physical pain. She was 8 months pregnant, had been bleeding, and the doctor said she needed emergency monitoring. But Nathan was angry because his secretary had called while he was being briefed on his wife's condition. "Sir, I need to ask you to leave," Dr. Johnson said firmly, stepping between them. His voice shook slightly, but his stance was protective. "This is completely unacceptable behavior in my hospital." Nathan straightened his tie, his businessman mask sliding back into place. But his eyes remained cold as he looked at Zara. "Fix this mess," he said quietly. "I have real work to do." He walked away without another word, leaving Zara alone with the medical staff who had witnessed her humiliation. The silence that followed was deafening. A nurse gently helped her back onto the examination table, her movements careful and kind. "Mrs. Richardson," Dr. Johnson said softly, "your baby is fine. The bleeding has stopped. But I need to keep you overnight for observation." Zara nodded, unable to speak. Her hand rested on her belly, feeling the gentle kicks of her daughter, a daughter who would never see her father treat her mother with such cruelty again. Something had shifted in that moment, something that could never be undone. As the nurses bustled around her, preparing her room, Zara stared out the window at the city lights. Nathan's company headquarters dominated the skyline, its logo glowing against the night sky. For 5 years she had stood by his side as he built his empire. She had supported him, loved him, believed in him even when others called him ruthless. Now she saw the truth. She wasn't his wife, she was just another possession. And like all of Nathan's possessions, she could be discarded the moment she became inconvenient. But Nathan had made one critical mistake. He had forgotten who her father was. Robert Sterling wasn't just any CEO. He was the man who had taught Zara that respect was earned, not given. That strength came from standing up for what was right. And that sometimes, the only way to stop a bully was to hit back harder than they had hit you. Zara pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. It was time to make a call that would change everything. "Dad?" she whispered when he answered. "I need your help." The concern in Robert's voice was immediate. "Zara? What's wrong? You sound upset." She looked down at her belly, then at the red mark on her cheek that was already starting to fade. But the memory would never fade. The humiliation, the fear, the realization that this wasn't the first time, it was just the first time it had happened in public. "Nathan hit me," she said simply. "At the hospital. In front of everyone." The silence on the other end was more terrifying than any shout could have been. When Robert finally spoke, his voice was calm, controlled, deadly. "I'm on my way." As Zara hung up, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Nathan thought he held all the power in their marriage. He thought she was trapped, dependent, helpless. He thought he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Outside her window, Nathan's company logo continued to glow, unaware that its days were numbered. Zara closed her eyes and felt her daughter kick again, stronger this time. As if she too was ready for the fight that was coming. The war was about to begin, and Nathan had no idea what was headed his way. 3 days later, Zara sat in her elegant living room, surrounded by evidence of Nathan's betrayal. Her laptop was open to bank statements she had never seen before. Her phone contained screenshots of text messages between Nathan and Candace that made her stomach turn. Financial documents were spread across the coffee table like pieces of a puzzle that revealed a picture she had never wanted to see. The house felt different now. Every expensive piece of furniture, every carefully chosen decoration suddenly felt like prison bars. Nathan had insisted they live in his penthouse after they married, claiming it was more convenient for his business. Now she understood it was easier to control her when she was surrounded by his things, in his territory. Her laptop chimed with another email from the private investigator her father had recommended. James Morton was discreet, professional, and unfortunately very good at his job. The photos he had sent made her hands shake. Nathan and Candace at expensive restaurants, holding hands at the theater, kissing in the parking garage of his office building. But it was the financial information that truly shocked her. Nathan had been systematically moving money out of their joint accounts and into offshore holdings. He had taken out loans against her trust fund without her knowledge. Most damaging of all, he had already filed preliminary divorce papers with a lawyer, claiming she was mentally unstable and unfit to raise their child. Zara's phone buzzed. Another text from Candace to Nathan, sent just an hour ago. When are you going to tell her? I'm tired of sneaking around. The baby will be here soon and I want us to be together openly. Nathan's response made Zara's blood run cold. Soon. I'm finalizing the arrangements to have her committed after the birth. Postpartum depression is so common, and with her family history of mental illness, it should be easy to prove. Don't worry, baby. Everything we've worked for is almost ours. Zara stared at the message, reading it 3 times before the full meaning sank in. Nathan wasn't just planning to divorce her, he was planning to have her declared mentally incompetent so he could take everything, including their daughter. She thought about her mother, who had struggled with depression after Zara's brother Thomas was born. It had been a difficult time, but her mother had recovered with proper treatment and support. Nathan was going to twist that family history into a weapon against her. The front door opened and Nathan's voice echoed through the penthouse. Zara? I'm home. She quickly closed the laptop and shuffled the papers into a neat stack, slipping them into her purse. By the time Nathan appeared in the doorway, she was sitting calmly on the couch, her hands folded over her belly. How was your day? She asked, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. Nathan loosened his tie, his expression carefully neutral. Long, important meetings. He glanced at her and for a moment she saw something flicker in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or fear. How are you feeling? Any more bleeding? The doctor says everything is fine, Zara replied. The baby is healthy. Good. Nathan moved to the bar cart, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. I've been thinking about what happened at the hospital. I was under a lot of stress and I reacted badly. It won't happen again. It wasn't an apology, it was a dismissal. Nathan was telling her to forget it, move on, pretend it never happened. Just like she had pretended not to notice him coming home late, pretended not to smell unfamiliar perfume on his clothes, pretended not to see the way he smiled at his phone when he thought she wasn't looking. I understand, she said quietly. Nathan relaxed slightly, thinking he had successfully managed the situation. I have to go out of town next week. A conference in Chicago. You'll be fine here, won't you? Zara nodded, already knowing from the investigators' report that there was no conference. Nathan and Candace had booked a suite at the Four Seasons. They were planning a romantic getaway while his pregnant wife stayed home alone. Of course, she said. I'll probably spend some time with my father. He's been worried about me since the hospital incident. Nathan's hand tightened on his glass. There's no need to involve your father in our personal business. He's going to be a grandfather soon, Zara said carefully. It's natural that he'd be concerned. Just keep things simple, Nathan said. No need to worry him with details. After Nathan went to his office to make phone calls, Zara pulled out her secure phone, a device her father had insisted she get years ago for emergencies. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Tina? Zara. I need to see you. Tonight if possible. Tina Rodriguez had been her roommate in college and was now one of the most successful family law attorneys in the city. More importantly, she was someone Zara trusted completely. Of course, Tina said immediately. My office or somewhere else? Somewhere else. This needs to be private. They arranged to meet at a small cafe across town, far from Nathan's usual haunts. As Zara prepared to leave, she looked around the penthouse one more time. Everything was beautiful, expensive, perfect, and none of it mattered. What mattered was the evidence in her purse and the plan forming in her mind. Nathan thought he was so clever, so careful. He thought he had covered all his bases, anticipated every move. But he had forgotten one crucial detail. Zara Sterling Richardson was not some helpless victim. She was Robert Sterling's daughter, and she had inherited more than just his business sense. She had inherited his ability to wage war. The small cafe was nearly empty when Zara arrived, her baseball cap pulled low and sunglasses hiding her face despite the evening hour. She spotted Tina immediately. Her friend's distinctive red hair was visible even from across the room. Tina stood up as Zara approached, her expression shifting from concern to alarm as she took in her friend's appearance. My God, Zara, you look exhausted, Tina said, pulling her into a gentle hug. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? They settled into a corner booth, away from the few other customers. Zara pulled out her secure phone and showed Tina the screenshots she had gathered. As her friend read through the messages, her expression grew progressively darker. "This is conspiracy," Tina said finally. "Fraud, emotional abuse and attempted theft. How long has this been going on?" "I don't know," Zara admitted. "Maybe months. Maybe longer. I was so focused on the pregnancy, on trying to be the perfect wife, that I missed all the signs." Tina's phone buzzed and she glanced at it. "That's my assistant. I told her to clear my schedule for the next few hours. We're going to need time to go through all of this properly." They spent the next 2 hours documenting everything Zara had discovered. Tina took notes on her tablet, asking sharp questions that helped Zara see patterns she had missed. The financial manipulation was extensive and sophisticated. Nathan had been planning this for at least 6 months, possibly longer. "We need to involve your father," Tina said finally. "This isn't just about divorce proceedings anymore. Nathan's company has been facilitating these financial crimes. If we can prove that, we can go after him on multiple fronts." Zara nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. "I'm scared, Tina. What if he really tries to have me committed? What if he takes my daughter?" "That's not going to happen," Tina said firmly. "Not on my watch. But we need to move carefully. Nathan clearly has resources and connections. We need to make sure we're prepared for whatever he throws at us." They arranged to meet again the following evening, this time with Robert Sterling in attendance. As they parted ways, Tina gripped Zara's hand tightly. "You're not alone in this," she said. "Remember that." The next day, Zara went through the motions of her normal routine while Nathan was at the office. She attended her prenatal appointment, had lunch with a friend from her book club, and picked up dry cleaning. But her mind was elsewhere, planning and strategizing. That evening she drove to her father's office building. Robert Sterling Industries occupied 15 floors of a gleaming tower in the financial district. Zara had spent countless hours here as a child, playing in the conference rooms while her father worked late. Now she was returning as an adult in crisis. Robert's personal elevator whisked her directly to his executive floor. His assistant, Michelle, was waiting with a concerned smile. "Your father is in the small conference room," Michelle said. "Can I get you anything?" "Water?" "Water would be great, thank you." The conference room overlooked the city, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view. Robert was standing at those windows when Zara entered, his tall frame silhouetted against the evening sky. He turned as she approached, and she saw the controlled anger in his eyes that she remembered from her childhood, the look he got when someone had tried to take advantage of his family. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" he asked, embracing her carefully. "Better now that I'm here," she said honestly. They were soon joined by Thomas, Zara's older brother, who worked as a corporate attorney for a prestigious firm. At 35, Thomas shared their father's sharp intelligence and strategic thinking. He had never liked Nathan, and his "I told you so" expression was barely contained. Tina arrived shortly after, carrying a briefcase full of documents. The four of them settled around the conference table as Tina laid out the evidence they had gathered. Robert's expression grew grimmer with each revelation. "This level of financial manipulation requires inside knowledge," Thomas observed. Nathan had help probably from someone in his finance department or his banking connections. "We need to identify his co-conspirators," Robert agreed. "And we need to understand the full scope of his business operations. If he's been stealing from Zara, he's probably been stealing from his company and his investors too." "What about the personal side?" Zara asked. "The affair, the abuse? That gives us leverage in the divorce proceedings," Tina explained. "But the financial crimes are what will really destroy him. If we can prove he's been defrauding investors and manipulating company funds, his business empire will collapse." Robert leaned back in his chair, his mind clearly working through possibilities. Nathan's company has several major contracts with government agencies. If he's been engaging in financial fraud, those contracts will be terminated immediately. That alone would cripple his business. "How long do we have?" Zara asked. "According to the investigator's timeline, Nathan plans to file for divorce and have you committed within 2 weeks of the baby's birth," Tina said. "That gives us maybe 6 weeks to prepare our counterattack." "Then we'd better get started," Robert said, standing up. His executive presence filled the room, and for the first time since the hospital incident, Zara felt truly safe. Nathan picked the wrong family to mess with. As the meeting continued, they divided responsibilities. Thomas would handle the corporate investigation, using his legal connections to dig into Nathan's business practices. Tina would prepare the divorce strategy and work on protecting Zara's rights as a mother. Robert would begin applying pressure through his business networks, subtly turning Nathan's partners and clients against him. "What about me?" Zara asked. "What's my role in all this?" "You're going to be the perfect wife," Robert said with a slight smile. "Keep Nathan thinking he's in control while we build our case. Can you do that?" Zara thought about the slap, about the text messages, about Nathan's plan to steal her daughter and have her committed. She thought about Candace's smug confidence that she would soon have everything that belonged to Zara. "Yes," she said quietly. "I can do that." But inside, she was already imagining the look on Nathan's face when he realized he had been outplayed. The Richardson name might open doors in business circles, but the Sterling name could close them just as quickly. Nathan was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 2 weeks into their investigation, the scope of Nathan's crimes was becoming clear. Zara sat in Thomas's law office, reviewing financial documents that painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning several years. Her brother paced behind his desk, his anger barely contained as he explained what they had discovered. "Nathan's been running a sophisticated shell game," Thomas said. "He creates subsidiary companies, moves money between them to inflate revenue figures, then reports those inflated numbers to investors and lenders. It's textbook securities fraud." The private investigator, James Morton, had expanded his team to include a forensic accountant and a former FBI financial crime specialist. Their preliminary report covered 37 pages and detailed a pattern of criminal activity that went far beyond simple embezzlement. "The offshore accounts are the key," James explained, pointing to a flow chart on his laptop screen. "Nathan's been funneling money through companies in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. On paper, it looks like legitimate international business dealings. In reality, he's been stealing from his own investors to fund his lifestyle." Zara felt sick as she looked at the numbers. Nathan had stolen over $40 million from various sources, including her own trust fund. The money had paid for the penthouse, his expensive cars, private jet travel, and gifts for Candace. "How did he think he'd get away with it?" she asked. "Arrogance," Thomas said bluntly. "And the fact that it's worked so far." His investors trusted him, his board of directors rubber-stamped his decisions, and his accountants either didn't look too closely or were paid to stay quiet. Robert entered the office carrying coffee for everyone. At 62, he moved with the confidence of a man who had spent decades building and protecting his business empire. He had been working his own network of contacts, and his expression suggested he had news. "I've been talking to some people who've had dealings with Nathan's company," Robert said, settling into a chair. "The picture isn't pretty. He's got at least 6 major clients who are already having second thoughts about their contracts." "Why?" Zara asked. "Quality issues, missed deadlines, cost overruns," Robert explained. "Nathan's been so focused on his financial schemes that he's been neglecting the actual business. His company is developing a reputation for unreliability." Tina arrived as they were reviewing the latest findings. She had been working with a family court investigator to document Nathan's fitness as a father and husband. Her report added another layer to their growing case. "I interviewed 3 of Nathan's former employees," she announced. "All of them described a hostile work environment. Verbal abuse, intimidation, sexual harassment complaints that were quietly settled. One woman said Nathan told her that wives were just temporary business partnerships that could be dissolved when they became unprofitable." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She had known Nathan was cruel, but hearing it described so clinically made it worse somehow. "There's more," Tina continued. "Candace isn't his first affair. He's had at least 3 other serious relationships during your marriage, Zara. All of them were employees who were later forced out of the company when the relationships ended." "So this is a pattern," Thomas observed. "Exactly. Nathan uses his position to coerce women into relationships, then discards them when he's bored or when they become inconvenient. The only difference with Candace is that she's lasted longer and he's planning to make it permanent." Zara stood up and walked to the window looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Nathan was probably having lunch with Candace, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. She felt her daughter kick as if sensing her mother's distress. "What's our timeline?" she asked without turning around. "We need to move soon," Robert said. "My contacts tell me Nathan's been having private meetings with potential buyers for his company. He might be planning to sell everything and disappear with the money before anyone discovers what he's been doing." "How soon?" Zara turned back to face the room. 2 weeks, Thomas said. "Maybe less. We need to have everything in place before he completes any sale." They spent the next hour finalizing their strategy. Robert would contact Nathan's major clients and investors, sharing just enough information to make them nervous about their business relationships. Thomas would file complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission and other regulatory agencies. Tina would prepare a comprehensive divorce filing that would freeze Nathan's assets and prevent him from leaving the country. What about criminal charges? Zara asked. Those will come, James assured her. Once the regulatory agencies start investigating, they'll find enough evidence to hand over to prosecutors. Nathan will be facing federal charges within a month. As the meeting broke up, Robert pulled Zara aside. Are you sure you're ready for this? Once we start this process, there's no going back. Nathan will fight dirty and it's going to get ugly. Zara thought about the slap, about the text messages between Nathan and Candace, about his plan to have her committed and take her daughter. She thought about all the women he had hurt, all the investors he had cheated, all the lies he had told. I'm ready, she said firmly. Nathan made his choice when he decided to destroy me. Now he gets to live with the consequences. That night, Zara returned to the penthouse and prepared dinner as if nothing had changed. When Nathan arrived home, she greeted him with a smile and asked about his day. He seemed relaxed, confident, completely unaware of the storm gathering around him. Over dinner, he told her about his upcoming business trip to Chicago, the romantic getaway with Candace that he thought she didn't know about. I'll miss you, she said, playing her role perfectly. I'll miss you too, he lied smoothly. But this deal is important for our future. For our family's future. Zara nodded and smiled, all while knowing that Nathan's future was about to become very different from what he imagined. In 2 weeks, his world would begin falling apart. But tonight, she would let him think he was still in control. After all, the higher they fly, the harder they fall. The war room was established in Robert's private conference suite, away from the main offices where corporate spies might overhear sensitive conversations. Maps of Nathan's business empire covered the walls, marked with red pins indicating vulnerable points. Financial charts tracked money flows, partnership agreements, and contract deadlines. It looked like a military operation, which, in many ways, it was. Zara sat at the head of the table, 7 months pregnant but more focused than she had ever been in her life. The team had grown to include specialists in corporate law, financial crimes, media relations, and private security. Everyone understood the stakes. They had one chance to take down Nathan completely, and failure would leave Zara and her daughter vulnerable to his revenge. Update on the investor situation, Robert announced, reviewing his notes from a morning of phone calls. I've spoken with representatives from Nathan's 5 largest backers. They're all expressing concern about irregularities in his financial reporting. 2 of them are already considering pulling their funding. Thomas looked up from his laptop, where he was drafting regulatory complaints. The SEC complaint is ready to file. I've got enough evidence to trigger a full investigation, which will freeze Nathan's ability to move money or sell company assets. What about the criminal referral? Tina asked. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is interested, Thomas replied. Once the SEC opens their investigation, the criminal case will follow automatically. Nathan's looking at multiple felony charges. Zara felt a surge of satisfaction, followed immediately by a wave of sadness. This was the man she had married, the father of her unborn child. Part of her still couldn't believe it had come to this. Any word from our inside source? She asked. James nodded. Patricia from Nathan's accounting department confirmed that he's planning to move another $20 million to his offshore accounts this week. She's been secretly copying documents for us: invoices, transfer authorizations, correspondence with the banks. Patricia was a senior accountant who had been with Nathan's company for 8 years. She had approached James after learning about the investigation, revealing that she had been documenting Nathan's illegal activities for months, hoping someone would eventually hold him accountable. She's taking a huge risk, Zara observed. She knows that, James replied. But she's tired of being complicit in his crimes. She wants to testify against him when this goes to court. The media strategy was equally important. Robert had hired a top public relations firm to manage the story when it broke. The goal was to control the narrative, making sure the public understood that Zara was a victim, not a co-conspirator. The initial story will focus on domestic abuse and adultery, the PR consultant explained. Those are issues people can relate to emotionally. Once that narrative is established, we'll gradually reveal the financial crimes. By the time Nathan tries to defend himself, public opinion will already be against him. Zara's phone buzzed with a text from Nathan, leaving for Chicago tomorrow morning. Take care of yourself while I'm gone. She showed the message to the room. He's still planning his romantic getaway with Candace. Should we stop him? No, Robert said firmly. Let him go. It will be easier to serve him with papers when he's out of town and his guard is down. Plus, the photos of him with Candace in Chicago will be perfect for the media. The private investigator team had already positioned surveillance in Chicago. They would document every moment of Nathan's business trip, creating an undeniable record of his affair that would destroy his credibility when he tried to claim Zara was mentally unstable. What about Candace? Zara asked. What's her role in all this? She's been helping him hide assets, Thomas explained. Some of the offshore accounts are in her name. She's not an innocent victim, she's been an active participant in the fraud. That knowledge should have made Zara feel better, but instead it just made her feel hollow. Nathan had chosen his accomplice well. Candace was smart, attractive, and apparently as morally flexible as he was. She'll probably try to cut a deal when the investigation starts, Tina predicted. Women in her position usually do. She'll testify against Nathan in exchange for immunity. The security team briefed Zara on personal protection protocols. Once the story broke, Nathan would likely become desperate and unpredictable. They needed to ensure both Zara's safety and the integrity of their evidence. We'll have plainclothes security with you at all times, the security chief explained. Your apartment is being monitored, your car has GPS tracking, and we've installed panic buttons in your office and your father's house. It felt like preparing for war, which Zara supposed it was. Nathan had declared war on her the moment he decided to steal her money, plan her imprisonment, and take their daughter. Everything they were doing now was just fighting back. The final briefing covered the timeline for their attack. Nathan would leave for Chicago on Thursday morning. On Friday, while he was enjoying his romantic dinner with Candace, the SEC would receive their complaint and issue a hold on his company's assets. On Monday morning, when Nathan returned expecting to resume his normal life, he would find divorce papers, federal investigators, and a media storm waiting for him. Are we sure about the timing? Zara asked. Once this starts, there's no stopping it. The timing is perfect, Robert assured her. Nathan will be off balance, away from his support network and caught completely by surprise. By the time he understands what's happening, it will be too late for him to mount an effective defense. As the meeting ended, team members dispersed to handle their final preparations. Zara remained behind with her father, feeling the weight of what they were about to unleash. Any regrets? Robert asked gently. Zara thought about the question seriously. She was about to destroy the man she had once loved, the father of her child. Their daughter would grow up knowing her father was a criminal. The scandal would follow them for years. But then she remembered the slap, the contempt in Nathan's voice, the text messages planning her imprisonment. She thought about all the people he had hurt, all the money he had stolen, all the lies he had told. No regrets, she said firmly. Nathan made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Thursday morning arrived with gray skies and cold rain. From her bedroom window, Zara watched Nathan's car disappear into traffic, carrying him toward the airport and his weekend with Candace. He had kissed her goodbye, told her he loved her, promised to bring her something special from Chicago. All lies, of course. But they were the last lies Nathan Richardson would ever tell her. The countdown had begun. Friday afternoon found Nathan Richardson sipping champagne in a luxury suite at the Chicago Four Seasons, completely unaware that his empire was crumbling back in New York. He had spent the morning in meetings with potential investors, pitching a new project that would require $50 million in funding. The meetings had gone well. Nathan's charm and confidence had impressed the Chicago businessmen, just as they always did. Now he was relaxing before dinner, checking his phone for messages while Candace showered in the marble bathroom. The suite overlooked Lake Michigan, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city skyline. Everything was perfect. Back in New York, Robert Sterling was making the phone calls that would change everything. Richardson Industries has been engaging in systematic financial fraud, he told Michael Harrison, CEO of Apex Technologies, one of Nathan's biggest clients. I'm sharing this information with you as a professional courtesy. My legal team has documented evidence of embezzlement, securities fraud, and money laundering. The silence on the other end was telling. Harrison had worked with Nathan for 3 years, and their partnership was worth over $15 million annually. That's a serious accusation, Robert, Harrison said carefully. What kind of evidence are we talking about? Bank records, email communications, testimony from inside sources, Robert replied. The SEC will be receiving a formal complaint on Monday. I thought you should know before this becomes public. Similar conversations were happening across the city. Robert's influence extended deep into New York's business community, and his reputation for integrity meant people listened when he spoke. By the end of the day, 6 of Nathan's major clients had received similar warnings. Meanwhile, Thomas was coordinating with federal investigators. The preliminary SEC complaint had been filed under seal, triggering an immediate hold on Nathan's corporate accounts. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit was already requesting additional documentation. The beauty of this approach, Thomas explained to Tina, is that Nathan won't know what hit him until it's too late. By the time he realizes his accounts are frozen, the investigation will be too far along to stop. Zara spent Friday evening at her father's house, trying to stay calm while the first phase of their plan unfolded. She felt her daughter kicking restlessly as if sensing her mother's tension. "She's going to be born into a different world," she murmured, her hand on her belly. "A better world," Robert assured her. "A world where her father can't hurt either of you anymore." Saturday morning brought the first cracks in Nathan's facade. His assistant called while he and Candace were having breakfast in their suite. "Mr. Richardson, I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, but we've had some unusual calls," she said nervously. "3 of our major clients have requested immediate meetings to discuss their contracts. They all seemed very concerned about something." Nathan frowned, setting down his coffee cup. "What kind of concerns?" "They wouldn't say specifically, but they mentioned questions about our financial stability. Mr. Harrison from Apex was particularly insistent about meeting first thing Monday morning." A cold feeling settled in Nathan's stomach. Financial stability questions didn't come out of nowhere. Someone was spreading rumors about his company, and he needed to find out who. "Get me a conference call with our top 5 clients for Sunday afternoon," he ordered. "I want to address whatever concerns they have before this gets out of hand." But when his assistant tried to arrange the calls, she found doors that had been open for years suddenly closed. Clients who had previously been eager to speak with Nathan were now unavailable or required their legal teams to be present for any discussions. "Something's wrong," Nathan told Candace as they walked along the lakefront that afternoon. "Someone's been talking to my clients, spreading lies about the company." "Who would do that?" Candace asked, though her voice carried a note of worry. Nathan's mind was racing through possibilities. Business rivals, disgruntled employees, regulatory agencies, any of them could be behind a coordinated attack on his reputation. But the timing seemed too convenient, too orchestrated. "I need to get back to New York," he decided. "We're cutting the trip short." Sunday's attempted conference calls confirmed Nathan's worst fears. Of the 5 clients he tried to reach, only 2 agreed to speak with him, and both conversations were brief and uncomfortable. "Nathan, I'm going to be direct," said Jennifer Walsh, CEO of Dataflow Systems. "I've been hearing rumors about irregularities in your financial reporting. Are you aware of any SEC investigations into your company?" "Absolutely not," Nathan lied smoothly. "Our books are completely clean. I don't know who's been spreading these rumors, but I intend to find out." "I hope that's true," Walsh replied. "But until this situation is clarified, Dataflow will be suspending our current contract negotiations." The second call went even worse. Richard Chin from Pacific Ventures was blunt in his assessment. "Nathan, I've known you for 5 years and I've always respected your business acumen. But the information I'm receiving suggests serious problems with your company's finances. Until I have independent verification that everything is legitimate, Pacific Ventures is freezing all payments and considering termination of our partnership." By Sunday evening, Nathan was in full panic mode. He had cut short his romantic weekend and booked the first flight back to New York. Candace seemed nervous and withdrawn, asking questions about their future together that Nathan couldn't answer. "What if the rumors are true?" she asked as they waited in the airport lounge. "What if there really is an investigation?" "There's no investigation," Nathan snapped. "This is just someone trying to destroy my reputation. When I find out who's behind it, they're going to regret it." But even as he said the words, Nathan was mentally reviewing his recent activities. The offshore transfers, the creative accounting, the loans against assets that didn't technically belong to him, any of those things could trigger an investigation if someone knew where to look. The flight back to New York was turbulent, matching Nathan's mood. He spent the 3-hour journey making phone calls, trying to reach board members, investors, and business partners. Most of them were suddenly unavailable or claimed they needed to schedule formal meetings to discuss recent developments. As the plane descended toward JFK Airport, Nathan stared out at the city lights below. Somewhere down there, an enemy was systematically destroying everything he had built. He just needed to figure out who it was and how to fight back. He had no idea that the enemy was much closer than he thought, and that the real attack hadn't even begun yet. Monday morning would bring revelations that would shatter Nathan's world completely. But for now he still believed he could salvage the situation through charm, manipulation, and sheer force of will. He was about to learn that some battles couldn't be won through intimidation and lies. Sometimes, the only way to win was to be on the right side from the beginning. And Nathan Richardson had chosen the wrong side a long time ago. Monday morning arrived with autumn sunshine streaming through the windows of the penthouse, but Nathan Richardson felt nothing but darkness ahead. He had barely slept, spending most of the night making phone calls and sending emails to his business associates. The responses had been uniformly cold and professional, a dramatic change from the warm relationships he had cultivated over years of successful partnerships. Zara was already dressed and having breakfast when Nathan emerged from his office, his hair disheveled and his expensive suit wrinkled from sleeping in his chair. She looked up from her yogurt and fruit, giving him a concerned smile that hid the satisfaction burning in her chest. "You look terrible," she said gently. "Did you sleep at all?" "There are some issues at the company," Nathan replied curtly, pouring himself coffee with shaking hands. "Nothing I can't handle, but it's going to require my full attention for the next few days." "Anything I can help with?" Zara asked innocently. Nathan's laugh was bitter. "I doubt you'd understand the complexities of corporate finance." The condescension in his voice was automatic, reflexive. Even in crisis, Nathan couldn't resist putting her down. It was exactly the kind of response Zara had been counting on, evidence of his true character that would play well in court recordings. "I should get to the office early," Nathan continued, checking his Rolex. "Try not to call unless it's an emergency." After he left, Zara allowed herself a moment of fierce joy. Phase 2 was about to begin, and Nathan had no idea what was waiting for him at Richardson Industries. At 9:17 a.m., Nathan's world began to collapse. He arrived at his corporate offices to find 2 black SUVs parked outside the building. Men in dark suits were stationed at the main entrance, checking identification and directing employees to a staging area in the lobby. Nathan's stomach dropped as he recognized the unmistakable signs of a federal investigation. "Sir, we need to see some identification," one of the agents said as Nathan approached the entrance. "This is my building," Nathan said, his voice sharp with anger and fear. "I'm Nathan Richardson, CEO of Richardson Industries." The agent spoke into his radio, then nodded. "Mr. Richardson, Special Agent Williams with the SEC Enforcement Division. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize financial records related to suspected securities fraud." Nathan's legs nearly gave out. Securities fraud. Someone had triggered a federal investigation, and it was already so far advanced that they had search warrants. "There must be some mistake," Nathan said weakly. "My company's finances are completely legitimate." "That's what we're here to determine," Agent Williams replied. "You're free to contact your attorney, but you cannot enter the building or access any company systems until our investigation is complete." Nathan stood on the sidewalk watching federal agents carry boxes of documents out of his own building. Employees he had worked with for years walked past him without making eye contact. His secretary, Patricia, emerged with a box of personal items, her face carefully neutral. "Patricia," Nathan called out desperately. "What's happening in there? How long have they been here?" She paused, looking at him with an expression he had never seen before, not fear or respect, but something that looked almost like pity. "They've been here since 7 this morning," she said quietly. "They have warrants for everything: financial records, email servers, phone logs. They seem to know exactly what they're looking for." The implication hit Nathan like a physical blow. This wasn't a fishing expedition or a random audit. Someone had provided specific information to investigators, someone who knew exactly where the bodies were buried. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from his attorney. "Nathan, I just heard about the SEC raid. Don't say anything to anyone until I get there. And whatever you do, don't try to access any of your accounts or contact anyone about moving money." "Moving money?" Nathan repeated blankly. "Your corporate accounts have been frozen," his lawyer explained. "Emergency injunction filed this morning. You can't touch any company assets until this investigation is resolved." Nathan ended the call and stared at his phone, his mind racing. Frozen accounts meant no payroll, no operating expenses, no ability to function as a business. Even if the investigation eventually cleared him, the damage to his reputation would be irreversible. Another black SUV pulled up, and Nathan watched with growing horror as FBI agents emerged. Federal agents meant criminal charges, not just civil penalties. Someone wasn't just trying to shut down his business, they were trying to put him in prison. His phone rang again. This time it was Michael Harrison from Apex Technologies. Nathan, I'm calling to inform you that Apex is immediately terminating all contracts with Richardson Industries, Harrison said without preamble. Our legal team advises that we cannot risk association with a company under federal investigation. Michael, please, Nathan began, but the line was already dead. Similar calls came throughout the morning. Client after client, partner after partner, all delivering the same message. They were cutting ties with Richardson Industries effective immediately. Years of relationship building, millions of dollars in contracts, all disappearing in a matter of hours. By noon, Nathan was sitting in his car in the parking garage, afraid to return to the penthouse where Zara was waiting. He couldn't face her questions, couldn't pretend that everything was under control when his entire world was falling apart. That's when his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Check your email. Time for the truth. See. With trembling fingers, Nathan opened his email to find a message from Zara's private account. The subject line read, "Goodbye, Nathan." The email contained attachment screenshots of his text messages with Candace, bank records showing his financial crimes, and copies of the divorce papers that would be served later that afternoon. But it was Zara's words that cut him to the bone. Nathan, by the time you read this, the authorities will have evidence of your financial crimes and your plan to have me committed after our daughter's birth. I know about Candace, about the stolen money, about your plan to take everything from me. I know because I've been watching, learning, and planning. You taught me that business is war and that the strongest player wins. Today you learned that you're not the strongest player anymore. You should have remembered that I'm Robert Sterling's daughter before you decided to destroy me. Zara. Nathan stared at the email for a long time, the pieces finally falling into place. Robert Sterling. Of course. Zara's father had the connections, the resources, and the motivation to orchestrate this kind of coordinated attack. Nathan had been so focused on controlling Zara that he had forgotten about the powerful family backing her up. He called Zara's number, but it went straight to voicemail. He called the penthouse landline, but it just rang endlessly. She was gone, probably had been gone since before he left that morning. As he sat in his car, watching federal agents swarm through his building, Nathan realized that he had lost everything. His business, his reputation, his freedom, and the woman he had planned to discard anyway. Worst of all, he had lost to someone he had dismissed as weak and helpless. The irony was bitter. He had been planning to destroy Zara, but she had destroyed him first. And she had done it using the same ruthless tactics he had always admired: careful planning, strategic alliances, and the willingness to show no mercy to an enemy. Nathan Richardson had taught his wife to be a warrior. Now he was about to learn just how good a student she had been. The law offices of Sterling, Rodriguez and Associates buzzed with controlled chaos as Zara's legal team prepared for the fight of their lives. War rooms had been established on 2 floors, with teams of attorneys, investigators and support staff working around the clock to coordinate multiple legal actions against Nathan Richardson. Zara sat in the main conference room, 7.5 months pregnant but radiating calm determination. She had moved out of the penthouse the morning of the raid, taking only her personal belongings and leaving behind the life she had built with Nathan. Her new apartment was smaller but felt infinitely larger without the weight of his presence. Update on the criminal case, Thomas announced, entering with fresh coffee and a stack of legal documents. The FBI has expanded their investigation to include wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering charges. Nathan's looking at 20 to 30 years in federal prison if convicted on all counts. Tina looked up from her laptop, where she was reviewing divorce filings. His attorney filed a motion to dismiss our domestic violence claims, arguing that one incident doesn't constitute a pattern of abuse. They're also challenging our character evidence. What about the text messages? Zara asked. They're trying to have them excluded, claiming privacy violations, Tina replied. But since you were the intended victim of the conspiracy they describe, they should be admissible. The media coverage had been intense. Nathan's arrest photograph, disheveled, defeated, wearing the orange jumpsuit of the county jail, had appeared on every major news outlet. The story had everything: wealth, betrayal, domestic violence, financial crimes, and a pregnant wife fighting back against a corrupt husband. Public opinion was overwhelmingly on Zara's side. Social media was full of supporters calling her brave and strong. Women's advocacy groups had embraced her as a symbol of resistance against abusive men who used their wealth and power to control their victims. The bankruptcy trustee wants to meet tomorrow, James Morton announced, joining the group. Nathan's company is formally insolvent. His debts exceed his assets by about $40 million. How is that possible? Zara asked. I thought he was wealthy. On paper he was, James explained. But most of his apparent wealth was stolen money or inflated asset values. The offshore accounts we've identified contain about $12 million, but that money belongs to his investors and creditors. Robert Sterling entered the conference room carrying a tablet with the latest news coverage. At 62, he looked energized rather than tired by the legal battle. This was the kind of corporate warfare he had been fighting his entire career, and he was winning. Nathan's board of directors just held an emergency meeting, Robert announced. They formally removed him as CEO and voted to cooperate fully with federal investigators. His own company is now working against him. The betrayal of Nathan's board was particularly sweet. These were men who had profited from his leadership for years, taking bonuses and stock options while turning a blind eye to his questionable practices. Now they were desperate to distance themselves from him before they faced their own legal troubles. What about Candace? Zara asked. She's hired her own attorney and is negotiating a plea deal, Thomas replied. Her lawyer contacted the prosecutor's office this morning. She's willing to testify against Nathan in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Zara felt a complex mix of emotions about Nathan's mistress. Part of her was satisfied that Candace was facing consequences for her role in the fraud. But another part almost felt sorry for her. She had been manipulated by Nathan just like everyone else, even if she had been a willing participant. The divorce proceedings are moving quickly, Tina continued. Nathan's attorney is trying to negotiate a settlement, but they don't have much leverage. With his assets frozen and his credibility destroyed, he can't afford a prolonged legal battle. What are they offering? Zara asked. Shared custody of the baby, no alimony, and a 50-50 split of any remaining assets after the criminal case is resolved, Tina replied. It's insulting, honestly. They're acting like Nathan is the victim here. Counter with full custody, supervised visitation only, and complete forfeiture of any claims to the baby's trust fund, Robert suggested. Nathan is going to prison. He has no business making decisions about a child's welfare. The strategy was working perfectly. Every move Nathan's team made seemed desperate and defensive. They were fighting multiple battles simultaneously: criminal charges, civil lawsuits, regulatory investigations, and divorce proceedings, while Zara's team had the luxury of coordination and preparation. There's something else, James said, his expression serious. Our investigation has uncovered evidence that Nathan was planning to leave the country. He had a passport under a false name and travel arrangements to a non-extradition country. If we hadn't moved when we did, he might have disappeared with all the money. The revelation sent a chill through the room. Nathan hadn't just been planning to divorce Zara and steal her assets, he had been planning to abandon his daughter entirely and start a new life somewhere beyond the reach of American law. He was going to take the money and run, Zara said quietly. Leave me imprisoned in a mental institution and our daughter without a father. But he didn't, Robert said firmly. Because you were stronger and smarter than he gave you credit for. You fought back and you won. As the meeting continued, Zara felt her daughter kicking vigorously, as if responding to the intensity of the discussion. She was going to be born into a complicated situation: her father in prison, her mother rebuilding her life, the family name associated with scandal and legal battles. But she would also be born into freedom. Free from Nathan's control, free from his manipulation, free to grow up knowing that her mother had fought for her right to a safe and honest life. What's the timeline for resolution? Zara asked. The criminal trial will probably start in 6 months, Thomas replied. The divorce should be finalized well before then. And the civil suits against Nathan's company will take years to resolve, but that's not really our concern anymore. 6 months, Zara repeated. By then, her daughter would be born and she would be starting her new life as a single mother. It seemed both impossibly far away and frighteningly close. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You'll regret what you've done to me. The threat was clearly from Nathan, probably sent from someone else's phone since his communications were being monitored. Zara showed the message to her security team, who immediately contacted the prosecutor's office. He's violating the restraining order, Tina observed. This just gave us more ammunition for the custody fight. Even from jail, Nathan was making the same mistakes that had gotten him into trouble in the first place. He couldn't resist trying to control and intimidate, even when it only made his situation worse. Let him keep digging his own grave, Robert said grimly. Every threat he makes just proves we were right about his character. As the legal team dispersed to handle their various responsibilities, Zara remained in the conference room with her father. Outside the windows, the city continued its daily business, unaware of the corporate drama playing out in courtrooms and law offices. "Any regrets?" Robert asked, repeating the question he had posed weeks earlier. Zara thought about Nathan sitting in jail, his empire destroyed, his future reduced to legal proceedings and prison sentences. She thought about their daughter, who would grow up without a father but also without fear. "No regrets," she said firmly. "Nathan chose this path when he decided to hurt me. Everything that happens to him now is just justice." The war was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Nathan Richardson had picked the wrong enemy, and now he was paying the price for his arrogance. 6 weeks after the federal raid, Nathan Richardson sat in a stark conference room at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, staring at documents that represented the complete collapse of his life. His orange jumpsuit was a far cry from the $1,000 suits he used to wear, and the fluorescent lighting cast harsh shadows on his face, making him look older and more haggard than his 38 years. Across the metal table sat his defense attorney, looking tired and frustrated. The evidence against Nathan was overwhelming and they both knew it. Bank records, email communications, witness testimony, and financial documents painted a clear picture of systematic fraud spanning multiple years. "The prosecutor's office has made their final offer," his lawyer said, sliding a document across the table. 15 years in federal prison, full restitution of stolen funds and permanent forfeiture of all assets. In exchange, they'll drop the racketeering charges and recommend minimum security placement. Nathan read the plea agreement with growing despair. 15 years. He would be 53 when he was released, assuming he served the full sentence. His daughter would be a teenager who barely remembered him. His business empire would be a footnote in financial crime textbooks. "What if I go to trial?" he asked weakly. "You'll lose," his attorney replied bluntly. "The evidence is overwhelming and public opinion is completely against you. A jury trial would probably result in 25 to 30 years, maximum security. Plus, the civil suits would continue, and you'd be personally liable for millions in damages." The civil suits had been devastating. Investors who had lost money were demanding compensation. Employees who had been fired when the company collapsed were suing for wrongful termination. Even the government was seeking treble damages for the tax fraud charges. "What about my daughter?" Nathan asked. "What about custody rights?" His lawyer's expression grew even grimmer. "Nathan, you need to face reality. You're going to federal prison. The family court judge has already indicated that supervised visitation is the best you can hope for, and that's only if Zara agrees to it." The divorce proceedings had been a complete disaster for Nathan. With his assets frozen and his credibility destroyed, he had no leverage to negotiate. Zara's legal team had presented overwhelming evidence of abuse, fraud, and abandonment. The judge had been particularly harsh in his comments about Nathan's plan to have his pregnant wife committed to a mental institution. Mr. Richardson showed a callous disregard for his wife's well-being and a calculated plan to deprive her of her freedom and parental rights, the judge had written in his ruling. His actions demonstrate a pattern of manipulation and control that makes him unfit for unsupervised contact with any child. A guard appeared at the conference room door. "Time's up," he announced. Nathan's lawyer gathered his documents. "I need an answer on the plea agreement by tomorrow. The offer expires at 5 p.m. After his lawyer left, Nathan was escorted back to his cell, a 6 by 8 foot concrete box he shared with a drug dealer from Queens. The man was sleeping on the lower bunk, leaving Nathan to climb up to his thin mattress and stare at the ceiling. He thought about Zara, probably at home in her new apartment, preparing for their daughter's birth. The baby was due any day now, and Nathan would miss it entirely. He would miss everything: first steps, first words, birthdays, Christmas mornings, school plays. The irony was bitter. He had been so focused on controlling Zara that he had lost control of everything else. His plan to steal her money and take their daughter had backfired spectacularly, leaving him with nothing and no one. His cellmate stirred and sat up, studying Nathan with curious eyes. "You're that rich guy, right? The one who beat up his pregnant wife." "I never beat her up," Nathan said automatically. "It was one slap. One time." The drug dealer laughed harshly. "Man, you don't get it, do you? One slap to a pregnant woman is one slap too many. No wonder she destroyed you." The words stung because they were true. Nathan had spent weeks trying to rationalize his actions, telling himself that he was under stress, that Zara had provoked him, that it wasn't really abuse. But sitting in a jail cell, facing the ruin of everything he had worked for, the excuses sounded hollow even to him. A news report was playing on the television in the common area, and Nathan could see his own face on the screen, a corporate headshot from better days. The reporter was discussing the latest developments in his case. Richardson Industries officially declared bankruptcy today, leaving hundreds of employees without jobs and investors facing massive losses. Federal prosecutors say this case represents one of the largest corporate fraud schemes in recent New York history. The camera cut to footage of his former office building, now bearing signs for the bankruptcy trustee and federal investigators. Employees Nathan had worked with for years were being interviewed, describing a hostile work environment and suspicious financial practices they had been afraid to report. "He was always angry about something," said Patricia, his former secretary. "Yelling at people, making unreasonable demands. We all knew something wasn't right with the company's finances, but he made it clear that asking questions would cost us our jobs." The betrayal from his own employees was particularly painful. These were people Nathan had thought were loyal, people he had paid good salaries and given opportunities for advancement. Now they were lining up to testify against him, eager to distance themselves from his downfall. The news report concluded with footage of Zara leaving a medical appointment, her pregnancy clearly visible. She looked healthy and confident, surrounded by security guards but walking with her head held high. The reporter noted that she had started a foundation to help women escape abusive relationships, using her settlement money to fund counseling services and legal aid. Even in victory, Zara was finding ways to help others. It was exactly the kind of gesture that would win her more public support and make Nathan look even worse by comparison. That evening, Nathan called his mother from the jail's payphone. She had been his only visitor since his arrest, though even she seemed to struggle with accepting what he had done. "Nathan, honey, you need to take that plea agreement," she said, her voice thick with tears. 15 years is better than 30. At least you'll still have time to rebuild when you get out." "Rebuild what?" Nathan asked bitterly. "My reputation is destroyed. My company is gone. My wife hates me. My daughter will grow up thinking I'm a monster." "Then you need to prove her wrong," his mother replied firmly. "Use these years to become a better man. Show your daughter that people can change, that they can learn from their mistakes." After the call ended, Nathan returned to his cell and lay on his bunk, staring at the concrete ceiling. His cellmate was right, he still didn't get it. He was still thinking about this as something that had happened to him, rather than something he had caused through his own choices. The slap hadn't been an isolated incident. It had been the culmination of years of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and attempts to control every aspect of Zara's life. He had treated her like a possession rather than a person, and when she had finally fought back, he had been completely unprepared for her strength. Tomorrow he would sign the plea agreement and formally admit to crimes that would send him to federal prison for 15 years. His empire was gone, his marriage was over, and his daughter would grow up without him. But perhaps, if he was very lucky and worked very hard, he might eventually earn the chance to be a small part of her life. Not as the controlling father he had planned to be, but as someone who had learned from his mistakes and could offer her something positive. It wasn't the life Nathan Richardson had planned, but it was the only life he had left. The next morning, he signed the papers that would send him to prison and closed the final chapter on his business empire. The boy who had dreamed of building a corporate dynasty had become a man whose legacy would be measured in lives destroyed and money stolen. But in a strange way, signing those papers was also the first honest thing Nathan had done in years. Spring sunlight streamed through the windows of Zara's new office, casting warm patterns across the polished hardwood floors. The space was smaller than Nathan's corporate suite had been, but it felt infinitely more welcoming. Photos of women and children covered one wall, clients who had been helped by the Sterling Foundation for Family Justice, the nonprofit organization Zara had established 6 months after her daughter's birth. Zara sat behind her desk, reviewing grant applications while her 8-month-old daughter, Hope, played in a portable crib nearby. The baby had Nathan's dark hair but Zara's bright, curious eyes. She was a happy child, surrounded by love from her mother, grandfather, uncle and extended family. "Mrs. Richardson?" Her assistant knocked on the open door. "Ms. Rodriguez is here for your meeting." Tina entered carrying coffee for both of them and a small toy for Hope. She had become not just Zara's lawyer but one of her closest friends, helping her navigate the complex world of nonprofit management while continuing to handle the legal aftermath of Nathan's crimes. "How's our favorite little girl?" Tina asked, reaching into the crib to pick up Hope, who gurgled happily and reached for Tina's colorful scarf. "She's perfect," Zara said, smiling at the sight of her daughter. "Growing so fast I can barely keep up with her clothing sizes." They settled into the comfortable chairs by the window, Hope content to play with her toy while the adults talked business. The Sterling Foundation had grown rapidly, funded by Zara's divorce settlement and donations from supporters who had followed her story in the media. Update on the Richardson case, Tina said, consulting her tablet. Nathan was transferred to a federal facility in Pennsylvania last week. Minimum security as promised in his plea agreement. He's been assigned to the prison's financial literacy program, teaching other inmates about budgeting and debt management. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Nathan, who had stolen millions through financial fraud, was now helping other criminals learn to manage money honestly. Has he asked about visitation? Zara asked. His attorney submitted a formal request last month, Tina replied. Supervised visits only in a family court setting. You have complete discretion to approve or deny the request. Zara looked at Hope, who was babbling contentedly while chewing on her toy. For months, she had dreaded this moment, the decision about whether to allow Nathan any contact with their daughter. Part of her wanted to protect Hope from any connection to her father's criminal legacy. But another part recognized that completely severing that relationship might ultimately hurt Hope more than it helped her. What does Dr. Martinez recommend? Zara asked, referring to the child psychologist she had consulted. She thinks occasional supervised visits might be beneficial, but only if Nathan demonstrates genuine remorse and a commitment to change, Tina replied. She also recommends waiting until Hope is older and can better understand the situation. So not yet. Not yet. Maybe when she's 3 or 4 if Nathan has shown consistent good behavior and completed therapy programs. Robert Sterling arrived for their weekly lunch meeting, bringing flowers for Zara and a new book for Hope. At 63, he had embraced his role as a grandfather with enthusiasm, often joking that Hope was his favorite business partner. How are the expansion plans coming along? He asked, settling into a chair and reaching for Hope, who immediately crawled toward him with delighted squeals. Better than expected, Zara replied, pulling up financial reports on her laptop. We've received funding requests from organizations in 12 states. The model is definitely scalable. The Sterling Foundation provided legal aid, counseling services, and financial support to women escaping abusive relationships. It also funded research into domestic violence prevention and worked with lawmakers to strengthen protective legislation. I have some news, Robert announced. The Justice Department is using our case study in their new training program for financial crimes prosecutors. Nathan's case is now being taught as an example of how corporate fraud and domestic abuse often intersect. It was satisfying to know that their battle against Nathan was helping other women in similar situations. The foundation had already assisted over 200 families, providing everything from emergency housing to legal representation to job training. There's something else, Robert continued. I received a call from Nathan's mother yesterday. She wanted to know if there was any possibility of reconciliation. Zara's expression hardened. Nathan's family had been supportive during his trial, but they had also minimized his crimes and suggested that Zara was partially responsible for the breakdown of their marriage. What did you tell her? Zara asked. That reconciliation was impossible, but that we weren't vindictive people, Robert replied. If Nathan genuinely changes, if he completes his sentence and demonstrates real remorse, we might consider allowing him some limited contact with Hope when she's older. A very diplomatic answer, Tina observed. Hope had fallen asleep in Robert's arms, her small fist curled around his finger. She looked peaceful and secure, completely unaware of the complicated history surrounding her birth. She's going to ask questions eventually, Zara said quietly. About her father, about why he's not here. When that time comes, we'll tell her the truth, Robert said firmly. Age appropriately but honestly. She deserves to know that her father made serious mistakes, but also that people can change and grow. And if he doesn't change? Zara asked. Then she'll know that too, Robert replied. But she'll also know that she has a family who loves her unconditionally, and that she's strong enough to overcome any challenge. As they finished their meeting, Zara reflected on how much her life had changed in the past year. The scared, isolated woman who had been slapped in a hospital corridor was gone, replaced by someone who had discovered her own strength and used it to help others. Her phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Just got word that the last of Nathan's civil cases settled. The investors recovered about 60% of their losses. Case officially closed. It was the final legal chapter in Nathan's downfall. His corporate empire was now completely dismantled, his assets distributed to creditors and victims. The man who had once commanded boardrooms and manipulated millions of dollars was now earning 20 cents an hour in a prison laundry. Justice served, Tina observed, reading over Zara's shoulder. Justice served, Zara agreed. But more importantly, she had built something positive from the wreckage of her marriage. The foundation was thriving, Hope was healthy and happy, and Zara had found her purpose in helping other women escape the kind of situation she had survived. That evening, Zara sat in the nursery of her apartment, feeding Hope her bedtime bottle. The room was painted in soft pastels, filled with books and toys and photos of family. It was peaceful, safe, filled with love, everything Nathan's penthouse had never been. "Your mommy was very brave," she whispered to Hope, who was drowsily finishing her bottle. "She fought some bad people and won. And someday when you're old enough I'll tell you the whole story." Hope's eyes drifted closed, completely content in her mother's arms. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere in the distance, Nathan Richardson was beginning his 15th year in federal prison. But in this quiet nursery none of that mattered. What mattered was the future, bright, hopeful, and completely under Zara's control. She had taken back her power, protected her daughter, and built a new life on her own terms. Nathan had tried to destroy her, but instead, he had unleashed a strength she never knew she possessed. And that strength would ensure that Hope Sterling Richardson grew up knowing that no one, no matter how wealthy or powerful, had the right to hurt the people they claimed to love. The war was over. Justice had been served. And the best revenge of all was the happy, successful life Zara was building without Nathan Richardson in it. As she placed Hope in her crib and turned on the nightlight, Zara smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help other women, new chances to make the world a little bit safer for families like hers. Nathan had taught her that the world could be cruel and dangerous. But Hope would learn something different, that good people could fight back against cruelty, that strength came from helping others, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply refuse to be a victim. It was a lesson worth learning and a legacy worth leaving.